What is this thing? Luan asked as she looked down at the dragster-shaped portion of the CNI unit. This is what I've been working on this time. It's called a cranial natin injection unit, or CNI unit for short, Lisa replied. An injection medicine machine? How is that going to help Lincoln? Luan confused. Lisa began to explain about everything of the machine to Luan in some way that she had with her parents, but it made absolutely sure to leave out the part of the brain hemorrhage in Lincoln's brain. Luan seemed to intrigued by this amazing invention, but also frustrated. She couldn't understand why Lisa would just tell everyone in the first place. But why did she seclude herself from the rest of her family just to work on it in secret? Luan couldn't figure that out, no matter how hard she tried. But at least she now knows the understanding of what Lisa planned to try and help Lincoln recover. So let me get this straight. This machine is going to inject a huge load of Mennonites into Lincoln's brain to regenerate his damaged brain tissue? Luan asked curiously. Indeed, Lisa nodded. Once the Mennonites have been injected into Lincoln's brain, they'll regenerate and even heal the damage from brain tissue sustained from his head injuries and received from the fridge falling on him. His spinal cord cannot be fixed with his dentals, unfortunately, so Lincoln will be paralyzed from the waist down. His brain will be healed in the event if the invention is successful. Oh, so that's how it works. You're just saying that Lincoln's mindset will return to normal and he won't end up like a toddler for the rest of his life? Luan asked, sounding a bit more helpful. Hopefully, yes, Lisa replied. However, Lincoln may still have a few gaps of his memory due to his cerebral cortex suffered from almost much damage to his frontal lobe. Over time, his brain mantles will regenerate as the brain tissue in Lincoln's cerebral cortex. He may recover more of his memories. Lincoln will also have the rest of the while and to not engage in any serious physical activity allowed to her Mennonites to heal his damaged brain, or the healing process might not work properly. For the first time since Lincoln's accident, Luan felt something that she never felt before: hope. While Luan was no science expert like Lisa, she knew that if anyone could pull something off like this, that would be her. Technology that seemed to be almost impossible for the century. But Lisa was an absolute genius when it comes to advanced science and technology, and Luan had no doubt that something like this was possible if Lisa was the one inventing it. She also remembered what Lincoln had said into the called dream realm to say about Lisa something surprising in store, and Luan instantly realized that what she might have been referring to in Lisa's invention. Lisa, are you absolutely sure this machine will work? If it does, then it's an absolute medical genius, Luan said, how more helpful than ever. I am possible that it will succeed in capabilities, Lisa nodded. I ran several test simulations of the machine in action on my laptop, and they were all successful. I have faith that our brother will be in good hands once this machine is complete. Luan couldn't be even happier. The idea of seeing her brother back to his old self would be far more revealing forever, even if Lincoln still ended up being bound in the wheelchair for life. Luan was still enjoying seeing this mindset back to normal self again, and would also everyone else if they knew him. Lincoln would be able to live and progress like a normal human being. But again, I bet without his impairments due to losing use of his legs, Luan wondered if Lisa might be able to fix the problem in the future as well. What about Lincoln's spine? Is there any way of fixing it as well? Luan asked. As of now, no, Lisa answered regrettably. Perhaps in the future I shall find a way to restore Lincoln's spine. However, the CNI unit is not capable of regenerating bones, only brain tissue. However, it may be possible for me to develop Mennonites to regenerate the bones if the machine is a success. Yes, it would be, Lisa said. But of course, will you be letting the rest of the family know about this machine of yours? I mean, Lucy already knows about it, so it was only fair if anyone else is aware of this as well, Luan asked curiously. I suppose so, Lisa answered. But since you know about it along with Lucy, it's only fair if I let you and the rest of the siblings in it as well. As Lisa spoke, the sound of footsteps coming near the basement from above. Luan and Lisa turned to see Lori standing on top of the stairs, heading towards the basement with Lily sitting on the floor behind her. The rest of the sisters stood nearby out in the hall, wondering what was going on. Lisa, who are you talking down there? Lori called out. Luan was slightly out of nowhere view where Lori was standing, so she could see from where she stood. Ah, yes, it seemed that her siblings have returned, Lisa said, stepping into Lori's view. I was simply showing Luanda of what I've accomplished so far in the invention that should heal our brother's canal injuries. This response instantly got the attention of Lisa's other sisters, who came rushing down to the basement. Once they saw half of the complete CNI unit down the basement, They were all exchanged looks of confusion amongst each other. Lucy, however, looked over at Luan, standing nearby with her eyes widened behind her black hair, in surprise and shock. She instantly began to fear that Luan had found out about the brain hemorrhage in Lincoln's brain. But Luan didn't seem to be angry or upset. Instead, she appeared showing both off and intrigued, like something like this for the rest of her sisters. Lucy began to get the idea that Lisa might have told Luan about the machine, but left out the part about Lincoln's brain hemorrhage, making her wonder why she hasn't just done that sooner or later. "What is this thing?" Lola asked, stepping closer to the dragster-shaped portion of the CNI unit. "It looks like a dragster. It's got its headlights at the rear front," Lana pointed out at the front of the machine. Lisa rushed forward to stop Lily from climbing onto the machine, then turned to the rest of the siblings. "Please refrain from touching the machine, siblings. It's very delicate and vital components that could easily get damaged if mishandled," Lisa advised her sisters as they examined the machine with curiosity. "Lisa, what is this thing you've been working on, and why is Luan down here with you?" Lori asked, eager for an answer. "Please calm yourselves and I shall explain," Lisa said firmly, then pulled a large blueprint of the CNI unit off a nearby table to show to her sisters. As soon as Lisa's other siblings quieted down, Lisa began to explain the plans on how to heal Lincoln's injuries by building a medical machine that could symphonize and inject millions of microscopic nanites into Lincoln's brain to regenerate his brain-damaged tissue. And she was in the middle of explaining till Lynn Jr. cut in. "What? Nanites? Dude, that's kind of stuff that only exists in sci-fi. Are you just pulling our legs here?" Lynn Jr. scoffed in disbelief. "I've got to agree with Lynn. That's the world at least centuries away from medical technology well advanced. Where do you even find the resources of building something like that advanced?" Lori asked Lisa. "Believe it or not, I have been doing some research and studying for several months, but I stopped short due to complications I was facing. However, that our brother's life has been threatened by serious injuries taken to his head, I assumed to work on this project. The Mennonites will have to be constructed individually, then replicated into millions of other Mennonites, then would be stored in the large medical canisters of the size of a soda can, which will be inserted into the small compartment inside the machine and symphonized before being injected into the patient's brain," Lisa explained. "Symphonized? What do you mean by that?" Luna asked curiously. "It's another word for programmed nanites," Lisa answered. "This machine sends a command code to the other nanites inside the canister, which are symphonized into their systems. When the machine injects the patient through the brain, it has a long attachable injection needle on the front of the appendage shown on this blueprint." "So replacing the Mennonites? That sounds something right out of Star Trek," Luna hinted. "Well, in a way, it looks very much like that," Lisa answered. "The CNI unit was built in Nanite replication system that can reconciliate no matter what I could produce next to the replica of the same objective of the scans. And in this case, the cardinal Mennonites. Once the Mennonites are replied with the place inside the metal GANS canister, the other procedures I mentioned are carried out." "Whoa, that's even possible in this century? I mean, this stuff seems so advanced," Lynn Jr. exclaimed. "Anything is possible if you know your science," Lisa answered. "How long will it take to complete this machine?" Lori asked. "Hopefully I should be able to finish it before the end of the month if I stay on my schedule. Our parents have already been notified by my school that I'll be taking a leave of absence to complete this machine on time," Lisa answered. "Wait, so you're going to miss school for the rest of this month?" Lenny asked in surprise. "Yes, I will," Lisa answered. "But it's not without a good reason. The machine needs to be complete before the end of the month so our brother can hopefully be restored into his original self. I honestly don't see a rush on why to complete this machine before the end of the month. I mean, Lincoln should be fine. Why not take the rest once in a while?" Luan suggested. "Not possible, Luan," Lisa answered, sounding a bit stern. "It is very important that I finish this machine before the end of the month. The quicker I finish on the machine, the quicker then our brother can hopefully return to normal." "But you don't think you're working too hard? We could assist you on the building machine together. That would get things done much faster," Luan answered. Lisa was about to protest, but then she gave Luan's suggestion a thought. While Lisa didn't have to admit working on the machine alone would take up more time, and was a bit hesitant to allow anyone to assist her, the CNI unit was probably one of the most advanced inventions that Lisa had ever created, and it was also a very important key for saving Lincoln's life. Because of how complex the machine's construction was, Lisa was afraid of letting her other siblings handle the machine in delicate parts, let alone installing them. If something went wrong, then with the rest of her siblings don't know what they were doing, the chance of surviving Lincoln would be lost, and Lisa's invention would be a failure. But yet, after thinking it over and informed what to do first, with extra help, completing the machine construction would go a lot quicker. Very well. I will allow you to assist in helping with the machine's construction, Lisa finally said. However, I insist that you do nothing to this machine unless I tell you to. The vital components are very delicate and very complex, and if they aren't installed correctly, the whole machine could end up being damaged and beyond repair. So it's very imperative that you do is exactly as I instruct you to do when installing the components on this machine. The rest of the sisters agree, and Lisa felt the urge of relief washed over her. Knowing that she was no longer alone in this, with the help of her sisters, Lisa would have this machine complete in no time, and Lincoln's mindset could be finally restored to normal. However, there was only one thing to do, and that was to move the machine. About an hour later, Lisa had moved the CNI unit into the garage with the help of her sisters and Lynn. After Lisa explained everything to them, Lynn agreed to let Lisa continue constructing the CNI unit inside the garage and also assist her and her sisters in helping moving the machine out of the basement. Afterwards, Lisa guided her and her sisters throughout the machine's construction, which they listened to it very carefully with their help. Lisa was able to install all the large maneuvering arm on the top of the machine and began assembling the main synchronized unit with the extender. The machine had quite a long way to go, but until it was complete. But now with that, Lisa needed some assistance. She had gotten a lot more with the machine completed to control the circuits of what seems to be harder to do. Once Rita arrived home around 6 p.m., she was quite surprised upon learning that Lisa let her other daughters in of what the invention of the CNI unit, but also feared that Lisa would also reveal Lincoln's condition to them. When Lisa left the garage for a drink, she was stopped by Rita near the front door. Lisa, just what do you think you're doing? Why haven't you told your sisters about the machine? She demanded. Luan grew very suspicious earlier, so I eventually told her and the others about my invention. But I made sure not to reveal Lincoln's condition to Luan or any of the other siblings. It's best that they don't know until the time is right, Lisa explained. I hope you didn't, yet I still don't get why you reveal your invention to the rest of your sisters, after you made it clear that you don't want them knowing about it, Rita inquired. I thought about it as well, and then I realized with thinking, and more clearly, it wasn't that I was worried about my siblings finding about the machine, it was I was worried that they'd find out about Lincoln's condition, like Lucy did. Yet I realized now I wasn't thinking clearly and did consider on just telling them that I'd be inventing the machine to save Lincoln's life, rather than telling them the complete truth about Lincoln's condition. Even a genius like myself makes mistakes once in a while, Lisa explained. I see. Rita replied, glancing at the garage. Why did you move the machine to the garage? That was another error I hadn't realized until recently. Once the machine's construction is complete, I will need to move it out for delivery to the hospital in order to perform the surgery on Lincoln that would save his life. But I wouldn't be able to do that if it was in the basement. That's why I've moved the construction process into the garage, Lisa explained. Wise choice, Rita commented, amazed that Lisa was able to notice the flaw before it was too late. Do you think the machine will be ready? Or when do you think it'd be ready? Well, with the help of my siblings, they'll manage to construct this whole lower part of the machine and the start of the maneuvering the item and serve as the main unit of the entire machine. So if I had to guess, I'd say the construction of the CNI unit would be complete about a week or at best, Lisa answered. That's amazing news, Lisa. The sooner the machine is complete, the sooner Lincoln's life will be saved, Rita replied with much relief. Indeed, Lisa replied, I won't let anyone down. Neither will I let you down. I know you won't, Lisa. Rita smiled, then picked up Lisa and embraced her. If anyone who could save his life, I know it's you, Lisa. No one could ever come up with something like this, not even a million years. I can agree with you on that, Lisa said, embracing Rita as well. Meanwhile, at the Royal Woods Hospital, Lincoln lay on his hospital bed, just gazing around the hospital in confusion and dismay. The time wasn't seeming about it to matter to him nor the boredom of being here. Lincoln had only dissevered many thoughts to keep him company, but many of those thoughts seemed confusing and incomplete. He had recalled dozens of other girls being there that day, yet he already seemed to have forgotten them, and that was the trouble of it all. Memories Lincoln thought knew or had known seemed to come and go whenever he at least expected it. For a moment he was certain that the image that had not been so familiar would rush through Lincoln's mind for a moment. It was like he was almost seen in his eyes, only to vanish like setting the sun. Very activity, very memory, and very thought just seemed to disagree with Lincoln. But the stuffed rabbit laying next to him seemed to be his serve as some sort of key to regain some of his memories, if only for a short time before they vanished as always. Sometimes the memories that were there that when Lincoln gazed at his stuffed rabbit were very pleasant, yet the others were very unsettling and even frightening. One memory that had rushed through Lincoln's mind earlier was him seeing the stuffed rabbit damaged in that strange room that seemed familiar to him, but couldn't clearly recognize. The rabbit had gotten damaged, but Lincoln couldn't remember, or so he thought. He thought that he remembered hearing some girl laughing at him, was gazed at the rabbit sitting on the bed, burned and damaged, yet Lincoln didn't remember who that girl was. Had he seen her before? Was it someone he knew? None of it made sense anymore, and of course nothing made sense anymore as far as Lincoln knew. But of course, when the moments where Lincoln would remember very frightening and painful memory, he didn't know why he was there or why he couldn't move his legs. However, there was a brief moments where he would remember them. Those 10 girls he came there reluctantly to see him, he had already forgotten most of them, and trying to remember them, which was the torture to his brain. But there was a woman who had shed tears over him in the hospital shower rooms, and the one who spoke was in much pain in her voice. Why did it seem so familiar to Lincoln and then the other girls? If Lincoln had any guess as to who they were, he had none. His mind was a complete mess and a completely of amnesia and confusion. He didn't even know why Lincoln didn't feel that at certain times, or he himself was who he got into there in the first place. It was only the hospital staff members that were around him that he was able to think clearly, but Lincoln was alone. It didn't make sense at all. He didn't know what to do or what to say, even though it seemed difficult for Lincoln. It was to process the words through his mind. Whenever he spoke, making sentences sounded incomplete or annoying. Sleep sounded like the only thing that mattered these days, a calm, restful sleep, and that was overtaking Lincoln quite quickly. Before Lincoln could fall asleep, however, someone entered the room and approached the bed. It was Dr. Lloyd. Lincoln had quite seen him quite often in his hospital during the day, but yet he forgot about the moment that he left the room. Lincoln gazed up at Dr. Lloyd as he began to wheel his hospital bed out of the room and tried to speak. "Where are we going?" Lincoln asked, following the procedure the sense. "Don't worry, Lincoln. I'm just going to take you in some more x-rays to make sure you're doing fine," Dr. Lloyd replied, sounding a bit upset for some reason that Lincoln couldn't figure out. I also need to check on that hemorrhage of your brain, that is how big it's gotten. I will have to notify your family about it tomorrow, since I can't get the chance to tell them the last time, or rather, I couldn't bring myself to tell them. I didn't want to put them in any more pain that they're probably going through right now, but I no longer have a choice. I need to tell them about the cold hard truth." Lincoln had no idea what Dr. Lloyd was saying and couldn't understand it either. Whatever it seemed to be very upsetting thing through him, since it was a very sad impression. His face, Lincoln wondered briefly if it had something to do with the painful feeling and began to reluctantly feel inside of his back as it had a while ago. But he had simply forgotten about how soon it came. "How am I supposed to tell the Loud family that Lincoln's going to die in the last day of April? As painful as it will be, they'll need to know the truth," Dr. Lloyd said to himself as he wheeled Lincoln into the x-ray room. Lisa then slid under the bed into bed around 9 p.m., completely exhausted from working on the CNI unit all day. With the help of her sisters, Lisa had completed a large amount of the machine's construction, but it still had ways to go until it was finished. An oval-shaped synthesizing unit had been constructed and formed, and the extender of the arm had been fully assembled and installed, yet the main operating unit and the replicator had been constructed along with the control panels and maneuvering yet would rather see the front of the wheels. But of course the machine allowed the person to move it around. Had Lisa had continued working this machine on her own, it would have taken at least an entire week to achieve the results, and that she did along with her sisters help out. Yet with their help, of course, with that being said, Lisa was able to continue most of the machine within 2 days, but still had ways to go till completion. And also Rita and Lynn had talked things over about Luan's punishment and decided to ease her restrictions, since she eagerly agreed to assist Lisa in helping her building the CNI unit. Luan would be allowed to leave her room, but if she not had to agree as to polls such as one prank or tell any puns or jokes. Luan agreed to these demands and swore that she would not defy her parents again. Thankfully, no one other than Lucy and the parents knew about the brain hemorrhage in Lincoln's brain, and hoped that it would keep it away until the machine was complete. However, she wasn't aware that Dr. Lloyd had other plans as she fell asleep. had not been even ready for the horrible unrest that would ensure the next day.